Good evening, I'm Mitch Friedman, and welcome to Mind Over Matter TV, where we like to teach you and introduce to you different modalities and techniques and sometimes even tricks for you to overcome the obstacles in your life and to just feel better and to reach some of those personal goals. Sounds like a good plan, doesn't it?
It does, Mitch. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, so we're here tonight with a really good friend of mine, Patti Bear, and she's a healer and teacher, and she does that through co-creation with spirit. And we're going to get into that in just a minute because it's just so fascinating, the whole concept. One of the things I've loved about you from the day I met you, Patti, was there's so much variety. Everything you do seems to be sort of so intuitive and so, I mean, it's creativity at its deepest, most wonderful, in its most wonderful place. And I know you do that with, you teach children and you teach a lot of other people how to do that. So, yeah, so tell me a little bit about how you got started, where you're from, how this journey began for you.
Okay, Mitch. And thank you for having me here today.
Oh, sure.
I raised my kids in Rockport, Massachusetts, which was an East Coast coastal fishing port. And so we were always in nature. We were at the beach. We were at the granite swimming holes, and always connected to the earth. Mm-hmm. Even as a child, I was sent out to the woods to play all the time, and we made fairy houses, and I was always working with horses and animals, and there was always that endless connection. When I was going to school, I didn't want to go to a conventional building of school. My interest was going out and meeting the people, meeting the elders, being with the old men that carved. So I wanted to experience life through an education, not being sat in a room. So that's where I was really blessed with how each piece has many mediums to it. There's wood carvers. I apprenticed with blacksmiths. I went to Nepal and worked with potters in a village. It's wherever the spirit moved me and took me, that's where I went and learned. Through our community, through people, through co-creating, through collaboration. So
I love that word. Both of that, collaboration and co-creating, both of that. It just seems like that's really the most powerful and empowering way for all of us to really get anything done, you know.
Well, I think it's really sad in our educations that they take a lot of that away from us, and the kids are made to just sit in a room. When they're so connected to the earth, when they're connected to animals, to the elements, and they know exactly what they're doing, and we don't even give them that chance to express all that creativity, that they're blocked by that. And so what I like to do is to bring the people in, and their first response is, I am not an artist. I'm not talking about being an artist. I'm talking about going within your own being, listening to your heart, being connected to the earth, and having that natural creativity to come out. And through that, you collaborate with each other, and all of these delicious visions and dreams and things come out, and then we co-create them together with multi-materials and mediums.
So give us a little bit of an idea what that looks like, because I know you teach classes on this. So what does that actually look like? How do people co-create?
Well, first when we gather, it is through song, it's through writing, it's through movement, and it's through, for me, what is very important is the medicine wheel. So the medicine wheel is 4 sacred directions, and if you go further, it's 7. So you would go to the south, the north, the west, the east, the sky, the earth, your heart. And it's beautiful. And so when you work, it gets very complicated, but when you work around the wheel and you go to different directions, each one stands for different things and pulls you into an intimate way of looking and working with yourself and how to evolve yourself and how to become more centered and grounded and move through your life. So through that, in a class, we'd be in the wheel, we'd dance the wheel, we'd drum in the wheel and rattle in the wheel. and then we would move around. And then when we sit in the center of the wheel, usually there's a fire in the center, and that's your inner flame. So you sit there, and I would take you on a journey, which is you would sit centered on your Mother Earth. You'd close your eyes, and I would recite a journey to you and bring you to a place where you would connect to the earth, and you would go then into the forest, you would go into a beach, a field, you would go down into a root. And then when you do that, I would take you on a story, and that would bring you to animals that would visit you, other images of yourself that would look at you, and then you would begin to see a story. You would start to see different strengths about yourself. And so when you come out of that, you could share about what you saw and what you experienced. And a lot of people have never done this before. So they get really excited about their stories of what they see. And so after you share, the most important part is in silence. It's within silence, being with yourself, that you create. So then I have spread out all the materials for you. You choose what you have seen, and then you start creating your image, your power piece, your medicine piece, and what you work with.
The one thing I hear from adults, I work with children also in my practice, but I work with a lot with adults, and one of the things that comes up all the time is people aren't self-expressed. They don't even know how to go there. They don't even know where to begin. So this sounds like such a wonderful way for people to really get connected inside, you know, intuitively, what's going on. And it sounds to me like it's not about judgment. You don't have to be a wonderful artist. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just
It's
has
absolutely
to be...
none of that. It's none of judgment or perfect or art. It is yourself coming out. And when you express yourself, people are surprised because a lot of people aren't even validated. They're under these conditions of you have to do your job and you have to come home and cook supper and then you go to bed and then you watch TV. But there's no inner heart. They've never been said, how do you express yourself? How do you feel about music? How do you feel about poetry? How do you feel about working your hands in clay, which is the body of the earth? How do you feel about stitches? And this is all parts of you. And so when people are given that validation to express themselves and sit there and create, you see this whole like lightening up of their body, and they relax and they release and they just start breathing really softly. And it's just so nice to see.
It's also, you know, I love that you say it's healing work, because it is. When people get into that place, I mean, literally, physiologically, they're actually activating their parasympathetic nervous system. So they're going into that place of healing, their place of just perfect balance. It's called homeostasis.
Yes.
So their body is actually going into that wonderful place. And from there, it gets even more juicy and more creative, and the imagination gets activated and stimulated. And I mean, it just sounds, and it's experiential too, which sounds so fun to have all these different, I mean, I look at your work and it's fabric and it's stitch and it's clay and it's wood, it's just a little bit of everything.
Yes. And for me, it's a journey of, I go out and hike constantly. My life is not right and my day is not complete unless I'm out on the earth and I'm hiking for at least 2 to 8 miles a day. It's like I have to be in the woods. I have to stand in a river. And a lot of times my neighbor watch and I dig a hole and I get in the dirt and they're like, oh, there's Patti Bear. She's in the hole again. And it's like I'm lying on a hot rock or I'm down in the dirt. And it's because I need that connectedness, because that's where I'm from. That's who I am. That's who we all are. And when we do that and listen, then spirit comes, you see visions, and usually for me, it tells me the medium, the element, what I have to express, and there's a story with it also. So every piece you see here has a story. It's come from some place, some spirit, some element, some connection. And then it's for me to find that material and to manifest that piece and then share the story out with the community.
And I know a lot of this is your story, you know, a lot of the pieces you do are your story, but I know you've also talked about that you work with people individually and also with families and hear their story and create something from that. How do you decide? Like, how does that come to you? How do you decide if it's going to be like fabric or wood or sculpture? Like,
well, again, like I told you, when I sit with a person and they start telling their story, their grounding, their soul, their pieces come to me in what element they are. So some people will be a quilted piece because it's very important that every thread tells their story. Every stitch is a different length or a different color, or even the pieces tell a different story. Some people are more earthy and they're more wood, so I know I have to carve them in wood. Some people are more fluid, so it would be a combination of wood and cloth and paint. It would be beaded, embroidered, quilted, painted, carved, like the piece behind you. It's like sometimes there's no limit to the amount. Some have to float. So some people I interview, it's the entire family, and each person in the family has a story to express. I did a quilt for a family in Philadelphia, and they all wanted to talk about the animals they loved. And even the kids, they said, could we draw the pictures? So I said, absolutely. And they gave me their pictures, and then I quilted their pictures. And so it was even the family dog was included. So you never know where the family is going to bring their story. And then one I did of, it was a couple, and they went to Hawaii all the time, and they collected vintage shirts, and they were divers. So the whole quilt became a whole underwater scene, but had to be made up of these vintage Hawaiian shirts. So every story is different.
and we all have our stories.
Yes, we do. And they're delicious to hear when you sit with people and they are given a space to tell story. It only enriches everyone.
And I also think that a lot of people, probably this is the first time that they've had a safe environment where they can actually be self-expressed and be creative and be supported in who they are and getting in touch with themselves. So that alone is probably healing right there. But like, what's the transformation? Like, what's the benefit for people? Because I know in my practice, it's exponential. It just goes out into every part of their life when they get in touch with who they are. There's so many advantages to it. But what in the work that you do and how you work with people, what's the advantage? What's the benefit of?
Well, I can tell you, when you start the seminar, and most of them go for 3 days to 6 to 8 weeks. So in a 3-day seminar, most people come in and they're very intimidated. They're thinking, artist, I'm going to be judged. I have to be perfect. So they have all this expectation built up and they're not sure how it's going to go. The minute you let that go and you validate what they bring, usually I say, bring something you've created. Well, one of the most enriching things I heard was a 78-year-old grandmother who came and said, I don't create anything, but I have 10 grandchildren. I said, hello. I go, you've created 10 grandchildren through your children, and you are bringing life in, and it's a continuum. So that's really lovely, but they don't even think of that as co-creating. And that's the gift. So as the weekend goes, and they're shown and validated in meditation and journey, at every intersection of it, they are asked to share their story and where they are at that moment. So their story starts growing. Their validation starts growing. Their walls let down and they get more relaxed. So that's where it starts, the beauty of it. So as it goes, you're placing all of this up around the room so it surrounds them constantly. I bring in different cultures of food. I bring in different cultures of story. There's different cultures of journey or meditation shared. It's the medicine wheel. It's my Scottish heritage. So it's a whole collective, and it's their story. So they see this building, this community building. Their trust starts coming, and they start sitting in circle, releasing all this beauty. So by the end of the weekend, they have shared things that could be painful, that could be happy. They're expressing all kinds of emotions and feelings as the creativity builds on the walls. So at the end, they're sitting in co-creation. They're sitting in a collaboration of story. It's all come from the heart and it's all brought to each other in a very safe, trusting environment.